This is Foreign Minister IWAYA's regular press conference. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you. At the very outset, I would like to make several points. First of all, prior to speaking, in general election held this time, Japanese people gave us extremely harsh verdict. While the results will be received in humility and solemnity, as Japan faces a severe security environment, with a view to safeguarding Japan's peace and people's lives and property, we will continue to advance solid diplomacy. Having said that, I would like to report to you on 3 points. First, at the G7 Finance Ministers meeting held on October the 25th, views concurred on the details of ERA loan to Ukraine, extraordinary revenue acceleration loans, and G7 leaders' statement welcoming that was issued. Japan plans to provide yen loan of 471.9 billion yen. This is a framework of G7's loan using the extraordinary revenue stemming from the immobilized sovereign assets of Russia, and repayment will be made from this source. Therefore, there is no national burden involved, and Ukraine's support will be continued. Coordination will be made so that prompt contribution will be made. Second, in Syria, with the worsening situation since March 2011, massive number of refugees and displaced persons are being produced. Further, with the worsening situation in neighboring country of Lebanon since September this year, more than 420,000 Syrians and Lebanese people are flowing into Syria. Therefore, in Syria, humanitarian situation is worsening, so under these circumstances, Japan decided to provide Syria emergency grant cooperation amounting to $10 million US through international organization. We will continue to respond in cooperation with the relevant countries to the Middle East situation, including improving humanitarian situation. Third point. On the November the 1st, I will host our first Japan-EU Foreign Ministers Strategic Dialogue meeting with Mr. Josep Borrell, High Representative of Foreign Affairs and Security of EU in Japan. At this consultation, centering around cooperation in security area, frank discussion will be held on Japan-EU relationship as well as the current international situation. Also, security defense partnership between Japan and EU, first one in Indo-Pacific region, will be released. And also, ratification instrument of Japan-EU Strategic Partnership Agreement will be exchanged. Through these efforts, we will deepen cooperation with the EU, who is our strategic partner. That's it from me at the outset. Thank you.
Please raise your hand if you have questions, and please proceed to the microphone after your name is called, and please state your name and affiliation before you asking your questions. Nishiyama-san, Kyoto. Thank you, Nishiyama, Kyoto. Well, I have a question about lower house election at the outset. You said that talked about the lower house election, but the LDP Kome party lost the majority. What will be the potential implications on the Japanese diplomacy?
Can I answer your question? Well, we have taken a look at the results of the election, but the results should not impact on our diplomacy nor our security. In order not to happen, we will do our best. As you may know, Japan is faced with the most severe and complex security environment at this time. Therefore, stability and continuity are required evermore for our diplomacy and security. So, continuously, our cornerstone remains to be the Japan-US alliance, and we would like to spread the circle of cooperation with our friendly nations and like-minded countries, and working on the diplomacy and defense at the same time, and realize regional stability as well as peace for Japan. In terms of diplomacy, based on the realistic national interest, we are sought to come up with appropriate responses.
Next question, please. Asahi Shimbun, Satomi-san. Asatomi, Asahi Shimbun, thank you very much for having me. Yesterday, Japan-China ROK senior officials meeting was held to reaffirm the cooperation, future-oriented cooperation. Since the Leader Summit amongst the three countries in May, we have had ministerial meetings in different areas. As the host of the next Leader Summit, what is the take of the current status of the trilateral cooperation? What is your plan to further advance that? I know that this trilateral framework has been susceptible to bilateral relations, and actually it took 4.5 years before the last meeting was held, and what is the plan for the future of the trilateral framework?
Three countries of Japan, China, ROK, who hold a big responsibility over peace and prosperity of the region. Their cooperation framework is very significant because of that. At the summit meeting held in May this year, a trilateral process has been reinvigorated. And ever since, a plural number of ministerial level meetings have been held. We positively value the fact that cooperation has been underway in such a way. Within the trilateral framework, future-oriented cooperation will be the important point to pursue. Yesterday, high-level officials meeting have been held, and views concur to further strengthen these cooperations and to discuss a concrete cooperation project which would benefit all of the three countries concerned. The date has not been fixed yet, but I will be hosting a trilateral foreign ministers meeting amongst Japan, China, and ROK, and I'm looking forward to having a discussion on making advancement toward future-oriented cooperation. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
NHK, Yoneuchi-san. Yonezu, NHK, thank you very much for having me. On the dispatch of North Korean troops to Russia, UNSC on the 30th on local time they decided to hold an emergency meeting, and there has been an activation of cooperation between Russia and North Korea. What is your take, and what will be the Japanese government response going forward?
You had pointed out about the DPRKs sending their troops to Russia. As far as Japanese government is concerned, inclusive of the possibility of them assisting Russia's aggression against Ukraine, we are watching this very closely with a grave concern. Ukraine requested Switzerland, the presidency country of the Security Council of UN, to hold a meeting to Switzerland, and as a member of the Security Council, we asked Switzerland to support the request of the Ukraine. Of course, Russia's aggression against Ukraine is the reckless deed shaking the very foundation of international order. Therefore, the Russia-DPRK military cooperation move made lately will not only worsen the Ukraine situation further, and also in view of the security situation surrounding Japan in this region, the impact can be serious, so we are very much concerned. Therefore, continuously, we will continue to gather relevant information and make analysis on it, and seek the full implementation of the relevant Security Council resolutions. And as early as possible in Ukraine, we really hope that fair and everlasting peace will be realized. And for that purpose, we will remain in close cooperation with the international community.
Thank you, sir. Nazari, Panorate News. The situation in the Middle East has been escalating despite Japan's repeated calls for restraint. The core of the problem is Israel's continued occupation of Palestinian, Lebanese, and Syrian territories. Japan supported all the UN resolutions to end the Israeli occupation, and the people in these occupied territories in 3 countries say they have the right to fight Israel to liberate their countries and to occupied land. So would Japan support imposing global sanctions on Israel to end its occupation in the same way Japan has applied sanctions against Russia? Thank you.
Well, over the entire part of the Middle Eastern region, the tension is heightening, and we are very much concerned about that. Japan condemns strongly any action that could escalate further those situations. Peace and stability of the Middle Eastern region is extremely important. Therefore, Japan is seeking maximum self-restraint to be exercised to all of the related parties, inclusive of Israel, and have strongly sought calming down of the situation. I myself had a telephone conversation with Israeli Foreign Minister Katz, and I made a point directly to my counterpart on October the 9th. Toward the advancement of Middle East peace process, we have been working on it very strenuously, and we will continue to do so based on our cooperation with the regional countries, also, as well as working with the G7 members and as a member of the UN Security Council. We would work closely to calm down the situation, realize the 2-state solution, and from mid to longer term for the regional peace and stability, we will continue our diplomatic efforts.
Nishimura-san, Radio France. I'm Nishimura, Radio France reporter. Thank you very much for having me. Anti-whaling activist Paul Watson is a question at stake. As you know, Paul Watson, anti-whaling activist, has been detained in Greenland since 3 months ago. Japan has been demanding extradition, but the Danish government, unless it decides there will be a continuous extension of the detention period, the image of Japan, particularly in France, is deteriorating. President Macron is asking for the release of Paul Watson. As the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, what is your take of the current situation, given the potential diplomatic risks? Is it possible are you prepared to look into the possibility of restoring a request for extradition of Paul Watson?
The accused Paul Watson, with regard to him, in terms of the legal execution over the ocean, we are taking his case. And with regard to the charges of inflicting bodily injury and vandalism, accused Watson have been accused of being involved as an accomplice. So he is not detained on the grounds of his anti-whaling position nor his ideology. We believe Mr. Watson is an accomplice to the inflicting bodily injury and vandalism. Therefore, we are asking him to be extradited to Japan. So this is a case which should be appropriately dealt with based on law and the evidences. And we are making required approaches to related countries and the organizations. So just lately, the accused, Mr. Paul Watson, wrote a letter to French President Mr. Macron asking for the nationality in France and seeking asylum. But Denmark, vis-à-vis Denmark, as well as vis-à-vis France, we are also making and continue to make similar approaches.
IWJ. Hamamoto, IWJ, thank you very much for having me. Let me go back to the situation in Ukraine. A follow-up question. 3,000 North Korean soldiers, they say, have moved to Russia. The question is, Ukraine has executed genocide for Russian-speaking Ukraine between 2014 and excessive military support to Ukraine, and looking at Russia as a foe, this has resulted in closer relationship between Russia, China, and Russia and North Korea. And amongst G7 countries, Japan is the only country neighboring with these three countries. If there were to be contingencies at the same time with these three countries, all of them possessing nuclear weapons, Japan will suffer, which has reviewed the interpretation of its constitution with regards to collective right of self-defense.
With regard to DPR case sending troops to Russia, Japanese government looks at it with a serious concern, including the possibility of DPRK assisting Russia's aggression against Ukraine. There is a credible information which tells us that DPRK is sending their troops to the eastern part of Russia, having them engaged in military training. So in cooperation with the relevant countries, inclusive of the United States and ROK, we are strenuously gathering information and making analysis. As I said to you before, the Russia's aggression against Ukraine is a clear violation of international law and a reckless deed which shakes the very foundation of international order. So recent move about military cooperation between Russia and DPRK that could further deteriorate the Ukraine situation. Therefore, we are very much concerned about it. You asked me whether we are to change diplomatic policy. I will tell you that we will continue to gather information and continue to make analysis, and we really hope that as early as possible, just and durable peace will be realized in Ukraine. And for that, we will continue cooperating closely with the international community.
Person in the middle. Japan Times. Earlier on, at the outset, you said that the Japan-EU security partnership is a question I have about the content of the agreement. And Japan has already concluded partnerships with the EU and NATO member countries. What are the differences between this agreement and the agreements that Japan have had?
What was your first part? Sorry, I missed your question. You talked about the Japan and EU partnership. Was that your question? All right. Just wait a moment, please. About the partnership agreement. Are you asking me the contents of that? as far as this agreement is concerned, value and principle is something we share with the EU, and also likewise with the EU members, and including global challenges over broad areas, we are to work in partnership in a strengthened fashion, and legal foundation will be given as a result of this agreement for working on it. EU-size procedures have been completed. Therefore, on the November the 1st, instruments of ratification will be exchanged, and this agreement will enter into force as of January the 1st next year. Of course, security environment are becoming severe for both Japan and EU, and for security and defense and any other areas, cooperation and dialogue will be further developed and deepened and strengthened. That is the objective behind the agreement. So concretely, the maritime safety space, cybersecurity, the information manipulation and intervention by foreign countries, hybrid threats. In other words, in these areas, we are to advance our cooperation. That is what we are imagining. Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific, their relationship is inseparable in terms of security. And with the incoming regime of EU would continue to strengthen the engagement in the Pacific region, and the Japan-EU cooperation is still continue. And we'd like to confirm all these points within the agreement.
Hope that answered your questions. Satomi-san, over to you. Yep. Satomi, Asahi Shimbun. Follow up to my earlier question. Based on what you said, the security situation is becoming increasingly complicated and has become increasingly challenging. There are pending issues amongst Japan, China, and ROK. What is the significance of seeking further collaborations amongst the three?
Yeah, talking about three countries, Japan, China, ROK, within the East Asia, all of the three countries are major countries, as you had rightly pointed out. There are difficult problems between Japan and China, as well as between Japan and ROK as well. However, peace and stability in East Asia is very important, respectively for all of the three countries, as well as for the entire region, and for that matter, for the entire world's peace and stability. So there are many pending issues out there, but these will be overcome in a future-oriented way. Cooperation will be held. That is the necessary thing. That's our thought. Therefore, amongst the trilateral countries, on the foreign ministers level as well as on the leaders level, I really hope that we can be future-oriented in carrying out cooperation. And toward that goal, we will continue to work toward it.
Murakami-san, GG Press. Thank you for having me. On UNRWA, I have a question. Yesterday, Knesset passed a legislation to limit the UNRWA's activities in Israel. With 7 countries, including Japan, you've issued a statement against this legislation. The passage of the bill, what implications could this have on the humanitarian situation in Palestine? And what are the plans you're calling out to Israel?
As you had said, at the Israeli parliament, bill which limits significantly the UNRWA's activities have been passed. And we are very much concerned about it gravely. So significant reduction of the activities of UNRWA, which was passed in terms of a bill by Israel, Knesset, we are very much concerned because not only Gaza region, but over entire Middle Eastern region, millions of Palestinian refugees have been assisted by UNRWA. humanitarian assistances, as well as in terms of healthcare and education, indispensable role has been played by UNRWA. Therefore, continuous activity on the part of UNRWA needs to be secured. That is very important. On the October the 27th, together with like-minded countries like Canada, as I said, Japan had issued foreign ministers' joint statement expressing a grave concern over this bill. We will continue to approach the Israeli government and also toward improving the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and to calm down the situation, we will continue to make our diplomatic efforts patiently.
We would like to now conclude the press conference. Thank you very much. Thank you.